Welcome everyone to another episode of Owning Her Health. And in this episode, featuring the lovely Thea Baker, we get down into some storyline that, I want all of you ladies listening to really take a moment and think about. What if you were so caught up in a bad situation that you accommodated life and you didn't even realize how much you wanted out until something tragic happened? And that's basically what happened to my guest, Thea Baker. Thea is a woman who is a trainer, a coach, a speaker. She has a wonderful blog. Her website, www.thea.com.au. Yes, she is an Aussie all the way from across. We had to do our interview. It was really amazing, and it always throws me off. It's just amazing how time is so really irrelevant, because we were holding that space, yet it was Monday in my neck of the woods, and it was already Tuesday morning in her neck of the woods. So it's kind of funny how things happen that way. But Thea was nice enough to share her story, which I have to say, I was blessed enough to be part of the Power Years Summit and subsequent project put together by two powerhouses that have been featured here on Owning Her Health, Michelle Lyons and hopefully Jenny Burrell. I know you guys have heard me speak about her. She's in the Mind Body Brand Academy, and they are over in Europe, in Ireland and the UK, and they put together this project that had some American health and wellness leaders and European and just a global community. I was so honored to be a part of that project. So definitely go look at the Power Years project, and definitely, if you have the ability still to download those stories, please do, because Thea is one of those stories. And as you'll see here in the podcast, she had to go through some stuff and literally lose her spouse to realize that she actually wanted more and needed to get out of that. And then how does she go back into becoming the woman that she is? And when you look at her website, this fitness, wellness life, it really is giving you that full circle of a story. And I knew right away in hearing her story that I had to reach out, because she was definitely one of our featured goddesses, flipping her pain, making it into this passion project and profit, line that she loves, working it into her life. So make sure that you, as I always say, buckle up in that car, put on this on the car ride, don't miss it out, pop it into your phone for the next exercise session, whatever you have to do. Listen on in and give us some comments what you're thinking. What would you do if you realized, like she realized at a very tough time, hey, I'm free? So I welcome your comments. I look forward to you, and this will be around coming out around the Valentine's love yourself type of time. And I really want you to take a moment as you reflect on some of the things you learned from our conversation. How are you taking care of yourself or not taking care of yourself? And don't leave yourself in the situation where you almost are forced to live the life you love. Take care, everybody. I will see you over now on Owning Her Health.
Welcome to this episode of Owning Her Health with your host, Dr. Lisa Holland, PT. Join Lisa as she starts the conversation on what it really takes to become a healthy, wealthy, and whole CEO of your life. Listen in to real talk by real lady leaders in all walks of life as they open up on personal health stories, wealth, career, and feminine abundant living. Learn how to grow by owning your body, expanding your mind, and aligning your soul with the purpose only you can pursue in this world. Happiness begins with owning her health right now.
Welcome everyone to another wonderful episode of Owning Her Health. On this episode, I have my second Australia connection. So I'm speaking, and this always blows my mind. I say it every time, like I'm speaking on Monday afternoon from my home office, and Thea, my guest, is over across the world, and it's already tomorrow, Tuesday. In her very early morning, she was so nice to come and meet with us. And that just goes to show you, you know, we're so interconnected now. Thea and I were just, Thea Baker and I are just discussing how, because of the online connection right now, we're able to connect with each other through the Power Years, which was the summit a couple of weeks ago. I hope some of you guys had a chance to see listen to my story with Michelle Lyons, listen to Thea's story with Jenny Burrell, and see where we're both at. But if not, go on back to those links and go connect, because that's how we connected. And we are able to now come together on a Goddess Chat. So I am so grateful, Thea. Thea is a women's health professional in the world of pregnancy and beyond, really, I see. And she is doing some exciting stuff, getting some programs and things together. And her work, again, as I said, is in Melbourne, Australia. And she's graciously gotten on here with us, and she's going to tell us all the yumminess of what she's doing. So welcome, Thea Baker. Thank you so much for being on this program. Why don't you give us a synopsis of your background a little bit, and what you're doing and where you're going?
Thank you so much for letting me come on board. It's just so exciting. And like you said, the ability for us to just get in touch with people, you know, globally, it just makes my goosebumps come up. So it's super exciting. Yes, it is. It's nice and early over here in Melbourne. And it's been a bit of a journey, I guess, is probably the best way of putting it. I was born in the Caribbean, actually, so much closer to where you are than where I am now. Lived there until I was 10 in the Cayman Islands, and then moved back over to England, which is my home, I guess, until about 7.5 years ago when I moved over to Australia with my two very little babies, my two little children, and my now ex-husband. And I jokingly refer to my life in Australia as being something of the biggest roller coaster experience of my life, because back then I was married to my ex-husband Mark, and I had two little children who were, they must have been 4 and 2 at the time, and since then I have had a divorce, a remarriage, and then my second husband, he died very suddenly, and I'll get into that in a second. And now I am way out the other side of that, but it's only been 7 years. Right. And I feel like when we were connecting via Jenny and Michelle on the Power Years project, I was talking to Jenny, and she was saying, you know, about, you know, living this part of your life and your midlife. And I said, yeah, but Jenny, which midlife? I feel like I've lived I've lived a few. So I guess the point where I am now is light years away from where I was when I first landed in Australia, and having gone through not only all of that kind of upheaval in my personal life, but then also being my second marriage to Charles, who died, and he died really suddenly in an ocean swim. So we were swimming at the time competitively. We swam in national competitions in the pool in Australia and also in the ocean. So we would spend pretty much our entire lives in and out of chlorine training, at least daily, if not twice a day, leading up to competitions. And about 3 years ago, I was almost to the day, I was due to go and have some hip surgeries because I had some labral tears and a whole bunch of like old lady issues with my hips, and
a lot of more later tears later, injuries. So you're not alone, unfortunately.
Yes, and now in my workspace, I seem to collect women who have similar kind of issues. Like you say, it's a thing. So I was going in to have bilateral surgery, 1 week, and then a week later the second operation. So I was having our summer season off of ocean racing. So I spent Christmas on crutches, and but Charles, he was an obsessive swimmer, and he had done lots of Ironman competitions and swam. He was South African. He raced for South Africa as a teenager, and he had to race. So he was racing, and I was being the support crew on my crutches over the summer. And we did all of that through January and then February. So I think he probably must have had, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 races that summer season. And then the last race of the season, the last ocean race of the season, I was taking him, I took my little kids down to cheer him on, and a friend of ours, he was also racing, and we dropped them off at the start. And it's a funny race because we have to finish, they finish the opposite side of one of the swimming channels, like the shipping channels, I guess, in Melbourne. And so I had to drive around with the kids to meet them at the finish line. And the whole thing should take roughly the same time. So I should be able to drive that journey in the same time it takes them to swim 4 kilometers or whatever it was. Right. And we rocked up, and there was some traffic issues, and eventually we got a park, and I'm vaguely aware that there's this ambulance coming along, and I can hear it, and I'm thinking, oh, you know, that's not a good sign. And I even said to my son, you know, I hope that's not for one of the swimmers. And he said, oh, but why, mummy? And I said, oh, because if someone's had to have an ambulance, then they've not had a very good swim. I said, but it's probably just jellyfish or something like that. Right. So we get down to the finish, and I realize that I've missed the finish line. Like, I've missed them getting out of the water at the end of the race, because I can see my really good friend, who we knew should have, you know, probably won. We were expecting him to win the race. And he's already half out of his wetsuit, so we knew that he was, you know, he'd been out a little while. And so I'm like, Glenn, where's Charles? I can't see him. And he said, I don't know, I lost him partway in the race. And I was like, oh, that's nothing unusual. He's rubbish at navigating. He probably went off course or whatever. And then I realized that this ambulance is actually there, like it's followed us along. And I suddenly, you know, you just know, like I knew why that ambulance kicked in. And I'm like, Glenn, go find out who is in that ambulance, or who the ambulance is for, because they won't let me in because I've not raced, la la la. And so he goes off, and he calls me over, and he says, it's Charles. So I dump my little children and tell them to stay put with their breakfast. Right, and right. I just run full pelt, and he's in there in this makeshift first aid tent, and they're trying to resuscitate him. So they've got the machine going, and they're all in there doing their CPR. And my first reaction was, you bloody idiot for not hydrating properly. You know, he'd had a race the day before. I'm thinking maybe he didn't, you know, rehydrate enough after, rest enough, recover properly. And then I realized, you know, actually no, the medical guy is talking to me and saying, has he got any heart conditions? Is there anything the matter? And long and slightly traumatic story short, they tried to bring him back for over an hour, and they couldn't, and he was gone, like in that second. And I can still, it's funny, isn't it, with hindsight, you remember the strangest things, but I can see myself standing on this, basically a dockside, which, you know, on any normal day is just where they have all the boats that are out of the water, the dry dock. And they've got all these pretty sailing boats, and there's this cafe that has windows overlooking where I was standing and where all this commotion was going on, where the ambulance was. You know, we're just, I don't know, maybe 5 or 10 meters from where all the finishers are, who are really happy and relieved that they finished, and there's all this happiness going on. And then there's this crazy wailing banshee and this chaos that's happening. And it's only, you know, afterwards that I realized there's all these people probably trying to have their lunch, and I am screaming the place down. And I yo-yoed. I had this period of like full on, obviously shock hit, but then, you know, screaming and crying and yelling his name. I got into this space where I figured if I just screamed his name as loudly as possible, then he would hear me and obviously come back. And then I just went like eerily super quiet. And at the time I didn't admit why I was so almost peaceful about the whole thing, but I was going through this rationalization process in my head, which I, you know, was acutely aware of at the time and was very aware of in the weeks afterwards, but certainly in the first few days I didn't let myself go there. But the marriage that I was in, which was literally 51 weeks to the day long, our anniversary, our 1-year anniversary was the week after he died. It wasn't a beautiful, wonderful marriage. It was a really controlling and emotionally abusive space to be in. And in that moment, I suddenly realized that if he didn't live, if they couldn't bring him back, then I was free of that. And like that brought this like sense of something over me that I literally can't explain now. It was just like that's what you need to hang on to when this all goes down, because I knew he'd gone then. I knew that whatever else happened, I knew however long that they were going to try and save him, I knew he wasn't there anymore. I just knew that was what I needed to hang on to, that quiet moment of, you've got this, and this is what you needed. Now, obviously, it was slightly more grief-stricken and horrendous, and I didn't come to terms with it in that rational, simple way. It wasn't that linear. And the process of, the funeral, and he has grown-up children, so having to go and tell them that he died, and I mean, that was horrendous, such a shock, and dealing with my poor little children who were there, and they had to say goodbye to this dead body, and I don't know how old they would have been then, 7 and 5, no, maybe a bit, to have to, explain death in such a brutal way was quite something. And I guess at that point, I came to this point, I'd started my business then. I was working in the pregnant postnatal space with women who wanted to get back into some form of exercise, but I was really about making sure it was safe. I had my own postnatal journey. I guess I truly believe a lot of us do. We have children,
right?
And forgetting the physical, which is a whole other side of it. I think emotionally, we just get lost somewhere in that process. We go in as one person and we come out as some variation of who we were. And that's an awesome thing, but for many women it's scary and confusing, and we get a bit lost in the process, and I certainly was one of those people. And for me, getting back into the pool and racing again and competing and training was my saving grace back in the early days. And so that was what my business was founded on, finding women who were in a similar space and helping them in whatever way I could. I retrained. My previous career was as an HR business partner, so I worked in corporate. Like, that was my world. I had my babies and I went, time for something different.
That's the other side of life, right?
That's right.
You were not even thinking was going to be there until all of a sudden it was.
Totally. Absolutely that thing. And so that had been, probably running at that point maybe 2 years, but very, very gently. My littlest one was still at home. He was at kindergarten still. He hadn't started school when I first started my business, and it had been very much on the sidelines of my life. I was deeply committed and passionate to it, but it wasn't something that I could give my everything to. And in that moment when Charles died, not only was there an urgency to suddenly need to provide to keep the roof over my children's head, but in that moment I realized how much he'd been stopping me from doing it. My life at that point had all been about control. I had to be at home when he expected me to be, otherwise it was like he was trying to catch me out. He would leave me notes and come home in the middle of the day to find out where I was and leave me notes if I wasn't there. He objected to me running too many sessions with my clients. He would rather that I was in the pool training as opposed to training other people. I remember having this conversation one day with him, and he said, look, if it's a choice between doing the cooking, the cleaning, or the shopping and training, you should be training. And I said, well, who is going to do all of those other things? Because he certainly wouldn't. And he said, we'll live in a dirty house and we'll figure out food some other which way. I said, well, you might not need to eat, but my children, they really do. Yeah. So that was kind of this space that I was in up until the point that he died. And, my amazing clients, they were the ones that were feeding me in those early days. They brought food to my house. They were at the funeral. They have been on this whole shindig with me. And at that point, I was just like, right, this is it. This is my chance now to turn this whole thing around. And I guess I have so much to be thankful for in that moment.
Yeah. So wow. Thea, thank you so much for sharing that warrior goddess story. Because it's so true. I heard several things there. There's the layer of just trauma. There's the layer of, recovery. There's the layer of, here you are, your work is, fixing the quote unquote broken woman, and then, taking that same heroine's path and living that path in a quietness, with an emotionally abusive relationship, and you've already gone through divorce, you know, having the kids, so much in a small amount of time. And so, you know, we always hear, you know, God gives, or the universe gives us, you know, the warriors, the ones that can take it and to learn it. And it does. It molds you. It molds you, or it crushes you. And you come out the other side. So there's so much strength in that. But you talked about a couple things, like that dual flame, you know, having that career first, and then having, you know, not even understanding you know, what you maybe wanted to be as a mother, or the family unit. And then, you know, having had, you know, a couple marriages in that and navigating that. Is there something, like, when you're looking through all of this now with your wisdom, can you think back, like, let's say when you were younger, let's say in your teens, becoming a woman, you know, where was that vision going? What did you learn through there, maybe made you take that fire that we all have kind of when we're young, and I mean, obviously you were in corporate America, you know, you were a go-getter. How do you think you worked that, you know, maybe that masculine divine, or where did you get the idea that maybe the parenting wasn't there and got that blessed surprise later on? Do you know? Do you go back and know?
It's funny. I think a huge amount. I see what happened with Charles as a huge pivot in my life. You know, an opportunity to really do something different. But it all started. That whole process started when I was 10 years old. When I moved back from the Cayman Islands, I didn't go and live at home. I went to boarding school. And at the age of 10, I was on my own in an all-girls boarding school. I'd lost my family that I knew. At 10 years old, like, my youngest is 10, and I look at him and I think there is no way on this earth I could leave him in a boarding house and not see him. And I guess at that point, I don't know, I became what I didn't have. Like, you know, you learn how to care for others when you are, even at such a young age, to nurture and to look after each other when you don't have that maternal influence in the same way. You know, we became each other's mothers and sisters. And my best, most precious friends in this earth I met at 10 years old, and I'm still, you know, they live in England, I live in Australia, we live all around the world, but it is as if we were together all the time. And that was a really important, I guess, an important thing for me. But at the same time, I was in this very academic world. I was a clever girl. I had, you know, achieving my grades was the thing to do. And I went and did what, you know, my A-levels and college for you guys, and went to university and achieved my thing. And then I came out the other side with this great degree. You know, I came top of my year. And then I was like, I don't know what to do with this. Like,
I gotta do something with this.
I've got to do exactly what I wanted to do. This is a theme that runs through my life. I wanted to be a teacher. I got a place at Cambridge University to do my postgraduate teaching qualification, and I turned them down because I didn't think I had enough worldly wisdom to be a teacher at 21. And so then I fell into this corporate world. I fell into HR. But it's people, right? It's still nurturing. What I wanted to do was to nurture and to look after these people, what the organizations I wanted to work for. That's not the purpose of HR at all.
Many organizations.
Yes, absolutely. You know, I listen to so many awesome podcasts these days, and I go, why am I not in those organizations?
I don't know if they really evolved. They needed the people who had their story probably before us to take over.
Yeah, that's it. But back then it wasn't.
It wasn't seen. It wasn't seen.
No, and I felt like in my moments I could do what I could do for the people that I worked with, but it wasn't fulfilling. It wasn't my heart's passion. And then, you know, I turned down, I applied again to do my teaching qualification when I was, I must have been 27, I guess. And I got a place to do it at Southampton University, because by then I'd moved to another part of England. And then at the same time, I also had like ovaries on fire, and I suddenly decided that that's actually, if I do this, if I become a teacher now, I've got to commit to this for a couple of years to get my foot in before I can do babies. But I really needed to make babies. So I turned that down again, and I made babies instead, right? And that was that moment where I was just like, I've got to listen to what my body is telling me. Like, this is what I need to do. And it's through that It's through that process, that refining process of becoming a mother, that I was then able to do what I do now. And, you know, that's evolved again. My mom, who is a teacher, incidentally, she often, yeah.
And you end up like a teacher. I mean, like, that's just to go to show you, because like what you're doing now, you're educating women.
That's it.
It's just a different way. Sometimes if we expand our mind on it, you will end up where your heart's desire is, if you allow it.
Yes, absolutely. And that is where I feel like I'm coming full circle. My mum said the same thing. She said, you are a teacher, you're just a different kind of teacher. But now it's gone on a level. So now it's not just that, you know, I guess that physical side. I'm down with helping my women recover from diastasis or abdominal separation. I'm all over prolapse and pelvic floors, to the point where I feel like I dream about exercising and strength training and all of that stuff. That is, you know, that happens in like some kind of subconscious level of my body. But what I really am focusing on is the emotional hurt. I guess what I learned most from all of the crazy in the last few years is that we all have our stories. We all have the thing in our lives, however big, small, dramatic, or inconsequential in other people's eyes. People hear my story and they think, oh my gosh, that is just ridiculous. How can you go through so much and still be smiling? And actually, we all have something. It doesn't matter if it was that grand a ridiculous thing that happens in front of so many people. There's the thing that holds us back and stops us becoming the woman that we were absolutely put on this earth to be. And so this year I took it to the next level. I took some coaching qualifications so that I could do more of the change side, like bringing my old training back, you know, my HR space, and working with women from that perspective. But then I just went, actually, that's not even enough because coaching presumes you're dealing with a whole person,
right? And
they just want to improve their life. Their life is great, but it could be so much greater. Whereas actually a lot of the women I come to are not broken, but they're a little bit more battle weary, and they have some stuff that needs some real work. So I'm in the middle of my masters of counseling to then really ramp it up to the next level, to really work the two things together. Movement, because it's a gateway to dealing with some of these psychological issues, the stuff that we really need to get to the bottom of.
Yeah, because we do. We wear it well. Some of us wear it more well than others.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
You know, and we can, you know, and I saw that you've spoken a couple of times. I was looking at a YouTube. It was Women's Summit or whatnot. I think
Women's Health and Fitness Summit. Yeah.
And, you know, like just kind of getting lost, and, you know, and we do. Everyone gets a little lost. It's just that, I guess, if you've had a past that has been unstable, you know, you kind of you get really good at it. You get really good at change, and you know, then you say, well, this must be me. This must be my constitution. And I really think if you don't listen to that, it does show up in the body. You know, and you can only work out so much for it to go on. And there's another layer that has to be gotten, because we're a mind, we're a body. I feel we're a very strong, energetic spirit. I feel we're a spectrum of, you know, a lot of our experience is not this body. You know, this body's constantly changing. Even our mind's constantly changing. It's that other thing that's been watching us and been with us since we were conceived.
Yep.
You know,
and before that, you know, even before that, I think it is the sum of all of our pasts. You know,
right.
And the more time that I used to spend with my mum's mum, my nana, and you know, you just, when you have those connections, and you just go, that's that part of me. That's that part of me, you know. And I talk to, you know, I see it in my daughter and my mum, and, you know, you just, we are a complex body and soul, you know, and if you ignore one to the detriment of the other, the wheels fall off at some point, and then you're dealing with a full-on crisis.
Yeah, and that's the thing, you know, I noticed, you know, I really like the way you have some of your stuff, like, you know, like wellness transformation. You know, it's not just like a wellness program. It's like at some point, and I guess this is what you're moving into, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you have to, with the coaching and all this is to transform, but transformation, you got to go deep. Like transformation means you are no longer what you were. So you have to be willing to let that go. And I don't know about you, but I find that's really hard for a lot of people in general, but women with our cycles and all of this, it gets so easy to get so comfortable in the mud.
Yep. And get so stuck, so stuck. And it's so easy to suddenly, especially in those years when you have little children, it all one day blends into the next day, which blends into the next cold, which blends into the next teething episode, which blends into the next, and suddenly you're 5 years down the track, 3 babies in or whatever, and you just go, I have no idea who I am, what I'm doing. And it is messy. Like transformation, I think, is one of those words that gets bandied around, and it's all, it's physical, it's all individual, and actually
like you're gonna look one different way, and all of a sudden everything in your mind's gonna change, your perspective's gonna change, your marriage is gonna change, everything's gonna change.
Life is going to be perfect. I have a very dear friend who had gastric band surgery, and she was convinced that her weight was the thing. Her weight was stopping her sex drive, it was affecting her marriage, it was affecting how she felt about her career, her life, her mothering capabilities. So she got the surgery. She did the surgery. Nothing else changed. Nothing else. Her marriage is just as it was. Her problems are still the same. Her issues are still what they were. Her job was still her job. Life stays the same unless you deal with whatever the nutty, messy stuff is that's right underneath. And that takes more than like a superficial coaching exercise program.
Right.
That's just as a means to make you feel better. You get some great hormones out of that. It does help you deal with the bad stuff. There's no surprise that when I was competing at my best and I was winning my 800 freestyle nationally a few years back was when I was going through the messiest time in my life. Right? Because that is a great foil to kind of go, let's just keep really busy and work really hard. And look what happens. You do this amazing thing. And I've got pictures of me in my racing suits on the wall, and I look at them and go, I would trade nothing to be back there.
Yeah.
I am happier with my very sore hips right now, doing what I'm doing, having lived the nightmare that I lived, but knowing who I am and what I'm called to do and why my purpose, I guess. And be doing this messy work, I feel like that's better. That is so much better. I learned a lot. Like we learn from our journeys, and we have to listen and observe and just be so utterly mindful of because we made those choices for a reason. We did those things because we were dealing with something, and I'm convinced the universe I had to learn one lesson probably many times because it took a long time for me to hear. And if I can help, I guess, show women the mirror sooner, so that not the physical, I mean to the inside, to help them hear those messages better sooner, then that's amazing. If we could be in our 30s living this amazing life as opposed to me being in my 40s, like if I could have done this 10 years ago, that's 10 more years of creating
like we're not there. And I'm like that too. I have an 18-year-old daughter, and I'm just like, gosh, I just hope that she can get a couple years extra, because they have to live life. And especially my daughter, she's kind of that empath, kind of like she has to feel it. Like you can't convince her until she's gone through it, and it breaks my heart because I'm like, if I felt it or if I saw, I learn very well from other people's problems.
Yeah.
Okay, I learned from that. I'll avoid it. But she's like, no, let me see how that actually would be for me. So it kills me, but I do hope that she's actually going into psychology now. So I'm like, there you go. We can blend the body and the mind together. I have a whole business set up already. I'm in my head, between the oils and the psychology and mommy's yoga.
You're good. You're going to take over the world.
I know, like sweetheart. But letting them be an individual. But it is true. Like I love now, with part of the reason also doing this podcast or just getting out there on YouTube's and this, or just connecting with other women, is that power of being in the women's circle, seeing the other women seeing them at their vulnerability, like we've been speaking of, not just in their glamour and their glory and their perfection. I was brought up a Roman Catholic, and like all we got is Mary, the Virgin. I mean, it's a really hard thing to live up to, So I've always been kind of like, you know what? There's a story with Mary Magdalene. She's pretty damn cool,
Yes.
And yes. She's like that. She could be somebody people could aspire to. I mean, she didn't run. she dealt with people calling her names that weren't even in the Bible for so long. So I'm like, you need that story. You need to see that lady that gets a little dirty, gets back up, and still does amazing things, which is what I hear you doing, and that's so exciting. So what's coming in store? I heard, now we've gone kind of that nurturing, brought it back, coming into some new programmings, getting some more wisdom in your new trainings.
Yeah.
What does that look like? What is the Thea from 10 years from now? What is she saying to you, hopefully?
I know. It's funny because I'm in the process of putting together a workbook with exactly this to help women do exactly this. So I love to spend, it doesn't have to be the end of the year, but it's always a great time. Like we were saying just before we got started, we're just ready for a rest. Like we're almost ready for a little bit of breathing space. And for me, it's always been a time for me to look back, reflect on my year, because it's always huge, like regardless of which year, it's always huge. And I always have such incredible dreams and intentions for the next one. So I'm putting together a workbook to help women with that process. So bringing together all of the things that I've liked to do and things that have been really not successful, because I hate that word, but that have been really helpful in crystallizing my vision, I guess. As a kind of lead in, so a free PDF just to help women spend some time getting to know themselves and putting together some intentions and some visions for what it is that they want to create. And then, so in the process of putting it together, it's made me go, yeah, now where's yours going? Come on now. Where is it going? And it's funny you mentioned circles. One of my big passions at the moment is that we don't have our tribe anymore. Like back when we were in the red tent days and we were all together with multi-generational women around us, I feel like I spend time with women who are so isolated, and maybe on the one hand they've maybe don't live near their mother anymore, they don't have their mum in their life, they live a long way away, we move, we marry, we settle down. We have this group of friends who may or may not be at the same life stage as us. They may not be settling down. They battle to make new friends. And then that's not the space where they want to share that everything's falling apart, because then you've got to put on a brave face because that's what we do. And everything's great.
You have to decide what level of your dirty you're showing.
Exactly. We don't show the messy to everybody, do we? We show that only to a very few. But I miss having my aunties around me, and I miss having my uncle passed away 2 weeks ago, and his funeral was back in England last Friday, and I missed it. And I miss having that other older, wiser perspective. I feel like I'm the wise one to so many women, and I'm like, where are my wise people? Right. I need
that matriarch wisdom.
Yes.
That woman down the path.
To share.
It's not an age thing, it's just experience. You need to kind of see so that okay, like I can be like that's our image,
Yeah.
You can't become a guy. You got to put it in a crown.
Yes, a crone, absolutely. And we don't have those. I'm lucky to work with a few women who are, in their 60s and 70s, and they've passed through to the next stage of their life, who are incredible women in my life. But I'm just like, we're all missing that connection. So I'm in the process of putting together a kind of more globally focused opportunity to do a coaching program so that women can come together at different ages and stages and just share their journeys, but also learn from each other and in a guided way. So we're going to look at different subject areas, for want of a better term, just as an opener, and just see where it goes, because I think that's where incredible magic happens when sharing. We just let it go.
Definitely.
We don't have to, so that's, and because, like we were saying at the beginning, we have the power of the internet now. We've got these great tools to be able to do this stuff, to be able to come up with something where women can connect virtually, they can do it from the safety of their own home, so that they don't feel isolated, so they don't have to make any effort to go find their kin, I guess, because
right.
we're all out
That's
there.
really why we've gotten, those things were established around community, even with the nomads, you'd be stopped and then the guys would go off, with this change in roles, which could be a whole nother show in its own.
Yes, several.
With this change in roles, it's been great because there's no limit, but it's also very confusing. I especially feel, and I often say, like Generation X, like that's like that 60s to, born into that to like the 80s, like just growing up, finding your way. It just really was confusing. I just find like it was really confusing because it was like, okay, you can do whatever the heck you want, but we weren't yet where anyone again has asked us, what is it that you want? It was more like, this is what you should want. And we hadn't reconciled what we were giving up with what we were going. It wasn't known yet. So it'll be really interesting now seeing this like next generation, like my daughter's generation, and how they work just all of this, right? Like transgender, no gender, all these do what you want, colors different, with all the bigotry still obvious. It's kind of interesting because my kids are so not. Like them and their friends, they don't really see that, yet there's so much still in the world. So it'll be super, super interesting, I think, in this story of like the women's circles, because it's allows us to, I guess, see that perspective, what was given up. I think a lot of women my age, your age, don't, or were almost made to feel, I felt like in my 30s, I was made to feel bad if I was like, I think I actually tried this work thing and whatever, and I think I actually do want to stay home a little bit more and do it some, like I wanted to work, I wanted to use my brain, but like I literally was like, I'm gonna have to make up my own thing because nothing fits.
Nothing fits. That's it. We were told you could be anything you wanted, and in brackets, you need to be everything.
Right. And
then, but nobody
needs to be everything.
Everything. And then when you realize that actually everything is so not a good thing, and nobody can be everything, and that is okay, then you have to make up your own rules. And I see so many women like us just going, you know what, we're just gonna make it up our own way, because
I know, right? It's, what do I got? Just like just like the food, what's left over, what can I make?
What can I make tonight?
And I'm gonna make it work. Any last bits of women's wisdom that you haven't? You've given us so many great bites. You don't have to give us anything, but is there anything else that you're thinking, something you could say, or you do say to, do you have a daughter, or you just have son?
My darling, well, do you know, I actually, bizarrely now, I'm in a relationship with a man, an Englishman over here in Australia, and he has 3 kids. So we have 5 children together. So we have 3 girls and 2 boys, and it's chaos most of the time. And they all know that I'm the one they come and sit and talk to when there's something to talk about. But my biggest thing is that we just, I guess, two things. One, it's in your vulnerability, and it's very Brene Brown, but it's in your vulnerability that you show up, I guess. And that I think gone are the days of the power suits and the trying to be everything and everybody and being perfect. Actually, just show up who you are. Just be completely authentic. And that takes some mess, because you need to know who you are in the first place. But trying to be something is so hard.
It just won't ever feel good. I agree.
It is
something.
Yeah. So just being you, and knowing that it's okay to be you, whatever you are, like whoever you are, in whatever state of chaos you're in. I learned that the hardest way, because I just fell apart and everybody saw it. And that's the point at which I started sharing everything, because everybody went through it all with me. Yeah. So I just went, you know what, I kind of owe it to them to own my story and share the truth of it, rather than, for me.
And when you own your story, that is really, I named this owning her health, but it was about having her story, because I don't think you really can have total health when there's that burden of playing that game, even if it's at a very subconscious level. You may not even understand. I know a lot of women are kind of stuff's coming up now with all the mansplaining and all that stuff, and because but it will. It will. Like, if you go on a journey, I always tell everyone, I studied a very classical yoga. I taught it that way as well. I said, look, this isn't the booty burn. If you want to stay there, that's fine. I hear it. It's for everybody. But like when you're going to do this, don't sign on to this program unless you're willing to understand you're going to see some stuff. Like you're,
Yep.
you know, because there's no other way. You can't ask to go down that path and then literally do it at half-ass. You just can't.
No, you can't. It's just
so be careful what you ask for.
Ugly, totally. Do you know, one of my old bosses said that to me. Just be very careful what you ask for.
Right, because you will get it. Like if you're a strong woman, you will manifest. That's our nature.
Yep.
You know, it might have to come through the chaos, but you will manifest it, just like you said. In the end, no matter how many times you said no to that teaching, no matter how many babies you had, no matter how many chaos, you became it. Because it was supposed to be. It was supposed to be.
That's it.
Thank you so much, Thea. I wish we could talk forever. But attention spans are not that long, and I try to credit that. But I do want to talk. I'm going to keep in contact with you. I'm so excited to connect with you. I selfishly, I think, have this podcast for myself a lot. I will admit it has brought me into contact with so many of these medicine women, and I just think that if we're connected, we'll hit everyone else to
totally.
With. So total blessing. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for waking up early and being on my show with me. So that's another episode of Owning Her Health. This will be in the brand new year, the first month of the new year most likely. So hopefully you'll take our tidbits and our conversation. Please contact Thea. All the way to get in touch with her will be in the show notes. And if she has that workbook done or whatever, a direct line to that page, I will get that on there as well. All right, guys, next time for Owning Her Health.
Thank you for listening into this episode of Owning Her Health with Dr. Lisa Holland, PT. To learn more about her personal and professional development service, visit her online at drlisahollandpt.com.